Let's get groovy.
Who controls the gold, sir? Is it the goblins?
J.K. Rowling thinks it's the goblins.
Wow. It's the Swiss goblins.
The Swiss mountain goblins instigating fascism so that once again the gold will find its way to the mountains. Illustrious show with me once again, the inimitable Luigi Sama. Hello, Luigi. How are you?
Hello, senor. Konnichiwa.
We've got a lot of news this week. We've got bank collapses. We've got all sorts of things happening.
Nightmare on Wall Street.
So let's get straight to it. We have to make time, Luigi. We have loads of news articles to get through.
Loads of news. But before that, let's do some non-serious stuff. Before the conversation strikes a different tone.
Yeah, we're gonna start with the less serious and increasingly get more serious.
I was gonna say we had the Oscars happening recently.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it, but Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I mean, must be a pretty decent movie because it received like 6 or 7 Oscars.
We will have to watch it and give it
all the important ones. So something to watch, something on the watch list. It's been a while since they made a decent movie, honestly.
I thought Parasite was good.
Parasite was good, but it wasn't Hollywood.
Yeah, fuck Hollywood though. Yeah,
fuck Hollywood. Well, it was really good for Korean cinema. It was
excellent.
Spectacular.
Yeah. A spectacular accomplishment. Okay, let's. I've got another stupid news.
Stupid news time.
We've got Newt Gingrich. You remember Gingrich?
Of course.
Leader of the House at one point. The Newt, a precursor to current nightmarish developments.
A titan of American politics.
A titan of the Republican Party, truly. He has decried DeSantis' insane Florida bill. Do you know what bill is now being debated in the Florida legislature? The bill being debated once would require bloggers who write about the state's governor, Ron DeSantis, the sanctimonious, deep state Ron, to register.
Meatball Ronnie.
And it would require bloggers who write about him to register with the state, even for Gingrich, the godfather of far-right republicanism, as is being described in this article. It's a good description.
Description.
Even he was like, this is fucking insane.
He's the neutering.
Even he was like, this is insane. This is insane. He should withdraw it immediately. The idea that bloggers criticizing a politician should register with the government is insane. And I mean, 100%. What is this shit?
It was
little dictator, Luigi.
It was the Constitution.
From Florida.
No. It wasn't the Constitution. It wasn't free speech. It was regulated speech. DeSantis 24.
But I mean, what are these tendencies? What is DeSantis' tendencies?
Yeah,
a little bit of the dictator in the Florida king.
A teeny bit.
Imagine, dude, we're gonna have to register.
We're taking this national, though. I mean, this is merely the testing ground.
Yeah, so let's get a few digs in now before we're not allowed to do it anymore because DeSantis will cancel us.
Please, Ron, please don't cancel us.
You've eaten too many meatballs, Ron, and it's going in your head. It's making things fuzzy.
We'll start praying to the chatbots. Ron, don't ban us, please.
But I mean, terrible developments. Let's move on to Japan.
Let's move on.
And Japan. I've got the mother of all stupid stories. Sushi terrorism. Since Japan's, you remember the conveyor belt restaurants, Your Sushi, those ones where you see it, and there's a conveyor belt and it's got the plates on the belt, and you choose whatever you want to eat. You know those
Yeah,
restaurants?
yeah, sure. The
Oh,
moving
yeah, yeah, yeah.
plates kind of restaurant. Yeah,
Yeah. In Japan, you'd assume there's a lot more of them than anywhere else. And
yeah.
it's been happening that in the weeks since a viral video appeared showing a teenager licking the open top of a communal soy sauce bottle and rubbing saliva on passing food at a conveyor belt sushi restaurant, chains have scrambled to restore their reputation for cleanliness, even if it means removing their main attraction, the conveyor. Some of them have started using servers again and waiters to bring the food and shut down the conveyor. It's a crisis, Luigi. It's a crisis.
We are
anarchy,
unautomating
anarchy in Japan, Luigi.
Sushi anarchy.
They took the sushi.
And they rubbed the saliva, and we had to respond.
Samurai give no fuck. Samurai rub saliva on conveyor belt sushi restaurant.
With all due respect to our Japanese audience, we're just having fun with this. But yeah, technology is going away, George. We're going back to horses. We're undoing all our progress during a pandemic. You know what's amazing is that Japan probably handled the pandemic the best, as far as I know. Like, considering that they're the most at-risk country, I believe they're
the oldest. That's what Luigi means.
Yeah, exactly. That they have the greatest amount of older people.
The samurai grow old and prosperous.
They actually had, I think, a very low fatality rate.
Yeah. They're a very disciplined nation, which is why this news strikes us as being very non-Japanese. But it's interesting what's been happening. Anarchy in Japan.
Also interesting, some actual news from Japan. The government last month introduced a pretty sizable subsidy on energy. They're basically sponsoring, they're lowering electricity costs for households. And I mean, Japan is a good place to be, I guess, with this sort of stuff, because Japan, they did it in quite some force, George. It reduced their inflation rate in a single month from 4% to 3%. So that's something.
Very interesting, yeah.
Okay, should we do the actual news, sir? The
Should
hot topic of the week.
Just a second. I've got something else which is interesting, Luigi, which is what's been happening with the Nord Stream pipeline.
Oh, yes.
Because
we have sabotage.
It's been going insane the past week, what's been coming out. First, we had Seymour Hersh, right? Who's an accredited journalist. He's the guy who, I think, revealed the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. And he came out with a Substack article alleging that the White House was behind the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, the bombing. They bombed it, right? Underwater, the pipelines.
Yeah.
My initial estimate was the Croatians, if you remember.
Yeah.
You were 50-50, either the Americans or the Russians.
Yeah.
And then there were articles in the New York Times and a report in Der Spiegel alleging that, I don't know, some Ukrainians were involved, Ukrainian nationals. It wasn't even a pro-Ukrainian group, whatever the fuck that means. And I mean, it's fishy all around, right? What do you think?
I think it's starting, like, a lot of stuff has come out lately and it's starting to seem more and more like it was the US. Now, why they would do that, like the motive?
I've got some ideas.
Yeah?
Yeah. Do you want me to elaborate?
Yeah, please.
By all means. I think the way they thought about this was we have to make permanent damage to Russia. I mean, if they invade, we're going to cause irreversible damages to what was the status quo before. And the status quo before, the pipelines, I mean, they destroyed both of them, right? Nord Stream 2 and 1, which was like, it was basically a call to Russia that you're never going to be using them again to get oil to Europe.
So let me get
it was sort of drawing a line in the sand.
The Americans blew up the pipeline to force Europe to diversify away.
If the Americans blew up the pipeline.
If allegedly we have to.
They did it, to force Europe to diversify away. And as a message to Russia that what you had before is never going to happen again. This is pure, I mean, I'm just speculating.
I mean, why would Biden sanctioned that? Really?
That's the report by Hersh, not mine, obviously. It came from the White House, specifically.
I mean, Jack Biden.
Jack himself, Luigi.
Jack.
Let me tell you, Jack, I don't fuck around.
Where's my ice cream?
I don't fuck around with little dictators, Jack.
I don't know. Biden doesn't strike me as someone who would actually order that. And I don't think anyone else can make such a call.
No, if it happened, it's from the White House, yeah. As per the report by Simon Hirsch, the report wasn't that they did it behind his back. They probably could have done it to Donny Boy, but yeah, I wouldn't fly with Jack. Jack would have been like, who blew up the pipelines? I'm gonna fucking fish fuck that ice cream up your fucking crack. Get corn pop in here. So yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. I mean, who knows, obviously. And there's been another news report that the Pentagon, Luigi, has been accused of blocking the sharing of US intelligence with the International Criminal Court about Russian war crimes in Ukraine. And the reason they're doing that is that they fear that holding Russian forces accountable for widespread war crimes may set a precedent that could eventually be turned against US soldiers. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm calling bullshit on that. I don't think the Americans have ever thought about anything through the lens of international precedent.
They haven't even signed it, the International Criminal.
Exactly. So, quite frankly, I don't think the US, like international rules apply to the US, nor do I think the Americans care about international rules.
As in the citizens, they probably don't even know what the International Criminal Court is, Luigi. Yeah. But apparently the report states that
as in administrations, as in
John
people
Bolton
actually make the decisions.
Obviously didn't give a shit. Depends on the people, I guess. Yeah. But give or take, now they don't give many facts, unless it's to prosecute our enemies, obviously. But I mean, even now they're actually not budging, so I may be wrong on that. The report states in the Guardian that the White House and the State Departments are proponents of cooperation with The Hague. But
we support cooperation.
They support it. Let's cooperate. Democracies unite. But
it's not that difficult.
But apparently the Defense Department is firmly against it. Anyway, a small news, just to keep it in mind, people. Just to keep it in mind.
But
and
since
we're at the point you want. Wait, what you want?
No. Since we are already on the topic of Biden, let's also mention the budget he proposed.
Of course.
Because it's quite a revolutionary budget, George.
Check and Joe, Luigi.
Check Joe Biden.
My good friend, Joe Biden. He's a commie, trust me.
Honestly, so the White House announced a budget recently, which, in all honesty, could have been written by Bernie Sanders.
By us, by Bernie.
By us, by us.
And just like his speech,
by people with some common sense about how the economics should look. And here's a few proposals.
With good senses.
That
not brain-dead idiots who listen to a guy with a beanie. He's got a beanie, folks. He's 30 fucking years old. Take it off. Be free.
Main points from the proposal for budget from the White House. Minimum tax on billionaires, 25% minimum tax.
There's a shitload of goodies in there.
On the income of the wealthiest Americans, including their appreciated assets. Notice what they did there. They said, imagine like you have a house, right? And you have to pay property taxes on it. Well, we're going to do the same thing, but with your stocks, which is
very fair.
What matters, essentially.
Because, I mean, guys like Elon, the grand majority of their wealth is in stocks.
There's also provision for essentially reversing the Trump tax cuts so it basically raises the corporate tax back to 28% from 21 currently, essentially undoing.
Which is very low for the United States, Luigi.
It's very low.
Very low for a country the size with a market and an industry the size of the United States. It is pathetically low. I mean, it's close to the level of tax havens at this point.
Now, when we say like it's 21 currently, it sounds like
it's
a lot,
even less. It's even less. You're right.
Like, you have to imagine after Trump. You have to understand, after Trump passed those tax cuts in 2018, Amazon and Apple paid 0%. In fact, Amazon received a tax rebate. They got paid for existing that year because 21% is not the effective rate. It starts at 21, and then you have a load of deductions like, do you employ an X amount of people? And loopholes. Like the more people you employ.
Sorry, Luigi, go on.
And the better lawyers you have, the less corporate tax you pay, to the point where the biggest tech corporations can just game the system and just basically pay zero, almost zero. In any case, Biden does that, and they also close what's called they double the capital gains tax from to 39.6%. They're basically saying income from investments should be taxed at the same rate as actual income,
which is
from
100% the way to go.
Which is 100%. Honestly,
and also what you mentioned, quadrupling the tax on corporate buybacks is also in the bill.
Tax on corporate buybacks, and the final leg is they close the carried income
the loophole, which is basically hedge fund guys getting paid as in their long-term capital gains instead of income taxed.
Exactly. So that they used to disclose it automatically. What hedge fund guys would say is, what I get paid is capital gains, so I get taxed at 19%.
At a much lower rate than income tax,
Yeah, than income taxes are, up to 40% almost.
They've been trying to close this one for decades, Luigi.
Yeah, it's as simple as just raising the other tax. Like if
obviously, by the way, dude. I mean. Yeah, what was Donny Boy's signature fucking policy that he passed?
They cut corporate taxes. That was the flagship, the mother of all flagships.
Difficult to happen with fucking Republicans in that goddamn place, raising the corporate tax. Yeah, obviously Luigi is 100% on point. You can get rid of the whole loophole by just raising the capital gains tax,
and it's not a loophole anymore because they can't use it as a loophole.
Which is 100%. I mean, working class people do not pay fucking capital gains, do not pay fucking taxes on their shares. So come on, I mean, Jesus Christ. There is no bigger evidence that the system is being gamed in front of your eyes. That the most they take out of people is the parts that every working class person participates in, like income tax. They're going to take the most out of that.
Here's the central point to make. None of this will pass.
That is an excellent point.
This will get watered down.
Easily the most important point to make.
Like what you just described is the proposal by Biden. There is a third chance in hell that this passes in its current form. It's going to get watered down. Maybe there's a chance nothing of what you mentioned
most
happens.
Of nothing. I mean, Biden has come out to McCarthy, the leader of the House now, and he invited him to the White House so they can go over the bill line by line and talk about it. This is going to produce nothing because McCarthy is a stooge for the oligarchs.
The oligarchs.
And this is not happening. So, yeah, I mean, Biden, I get why Bernie supports him, to be honest with you. I get it.
Yeah, because he's willing to propose.
There has never been a president like that for the past. I mean, you have to go before Clinton, definitely. You have to go way back.
Let me play devil's advocate. The only reason Biden is actually proposing it is because he knows it's not going to pass.
Luigi, he's got a good heart, Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
My Mima used to tell me, spread the faith, Jack. Spread it.
Be good to others, Jack, and one day you'll be president.
One day, Joey, you're going to be the president, Joey.
And then you'll tax the billionaires. Son.
And then you will find a warrior from Vermont. And he will guide the way, Jack. Listen to the guy from Vermont.
And thus his name, it was
and the
Bernard the Sanders.
And the leaves whispered with his name. Bernard.
And the ground trembled.
Nice. This is how you do it, folks.
To wrap up the whole Biden thing.
It's not happening, people.
This is not going to pass, but it does show you sort of the direction of travel, like where
maybe
the wind is blowing.
Maybe of
the Democrats, obviously.
Which is an excellent direction for the fucking demo. It is, and almost, when Biden got elected, I'm going to be 100%. I did not expect this rhetoric.
Me neither.
Jesus
I did not
Christ.
Expect to see this in writing.
This guy is the senator from fucking Delaware. He's responsible for students not being able to fucking get rid of their loans if they can't afford to repay them.
It's true.
Check it, Joe. Fox News is right.
It's really fun that you said the Democrats, because even if any of this passes, the moment the Republicans come back into office,
it's going away.
It's going away.
It's going away.
And we are in this eternal loop with
Yeah.
one party doing something and the next guy coming in and doing everything, and then the other guy does it again.
Because the Republicans have figured out a way to get working class voters through, let's say, races, nationalists, those sort of signals.
Religion.
How did I forget the best?
I
said the best.
The best for last.
Oh my.
All right.
And what religion, by the way, the evangelicals. What a specimen of Christianity. Christianity's meth phase.
if any of these people ever read George R.R. Martin books, their mind is gonna be blown. It's like, oh, there's dragons. There were none of those in the Bible.
Yeah. Shout out to Georgie.
Shout out to the one that must never complete the books.
Georgie, if you complete them, the world ends.
We shot one of the great TV show until the last few seasons.
Until the seasons where they had to rely on their own
Game of
words
Thrones,
instead of Martin's. Yeah.
Game of Thrones was pretty decent, and it ran for something like 8 seasons. And now we are doing the prequel as well, and the books have not been written in the meantime.
I've read, I think, the third one, part B, because he does parts as well, people. It's not even the third book. And it was very good. The third one, part B. That's my review. The third one, part B, really good. I think it starts with the Red Wedding and ends after, I don't want to give any more spoilers anyway, but it's really good. Part B, folks, read that one. It's great.
All right, anyway, our final piece of news, I guess.
I would say penultimate piece of news, Luigi.
Penultimate,
I think it's the one before the final one. Google me, bitches. Fact check me.
Right.
I want your scrutiny.
The big one. The big one, as they say.
It's bailout week.
It's bailout week. It's a bailout.
When all the libertarians become socialists again.
So throwback.
And beg the government for monies.
Throwback to the crisis that scarred all of us. A major US bank went down this week. In fact, the 18th largest bank in the country.
Let's give out the award. What's the award?
The award is best risk management strategies of 2023.
You give the best awards. Best risk management 2023. Biggest pile of tear. SVB, take it home with you.
Silicon Valley Bank. And as the name would imply, George, there were a lot of hot pieces of excrement placed in that bank. So it specialized in something called venture capital, which basically means very early stage.
Tech as well, right? Even more specific. Yeah.
It's in Silicon Valley. It's in Silicon Valley.
Obviously. It's the hot spot.
The hotspot. So you have to imagine they had a lot of risky, a very risky loan book.
And then go on with how many failures were part of this bank, the processes of this bank.
No, so my favorite statistic is, and what explains our choice of awards is this bank did not have a chief risk officer for the last 18 months.
Which is unheard of a bank of that size.
The 18th largest bank in the US, assets of, I don't know.
It is beyond ridiculous.
210 billion.
It is Sam Bankman-Fried territory, right?
Yeah. And
we spent it on video games and Dogecoins.
The Doge, it went down.
The Doge commands us.
I've been saying this in past episodes. This was always going to happen. Like when you take interest rates very high, very quickly, you are...
People have understand that it's one of the biggest game changers in an economy when you start fucking with interest rates. Because we're an immensely indebted economy in every aspect.
It's gravity. Like interest rates are the price of money, essentially. So when the price of money goes up, that acts like gravity for everything else. And in theory, it slows down everything else. But I mean,
But because the economic state of so many of our institutions is so precarious and so shifty and everything is so fucking risky and dodgy at this point that things can collapse fast when you do it, right?
Exactly. And
which is what happened to SVB.
Exactly.
Crypto has already
crypto
collapsed.
blowing up. Crypto blowing up. I mean, I'm not even gonna get up in the morning. It's to be expected. Yeah. But no,
which we still hear untold.
A major US financial institution, though, that actually had depositors' money. Yeah. So a lot of people started getting, I don't know, PTSD of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns. And
it would be catastrophic.
The 2008 thing. Like, here's what actually happened. Imagine you're a bank and you spend the better part of the last decade just, searching for investments. Mostly you have to hold US government bonds. At the time, US government bonds were giving you something like
much 2%. Better than interest rates.
Yeah, but like they were giving you 2% interest rates, baby, return per year. Okay. So you buy a lot of those, let's say 2% government bonds. And then, 2022 happens and interest rates go up to 4.5%. Well, suddenly those bonds that you are holding that are giving out 2%, well, they're not worth as much, right? Because our investor is thinking, I can go to the bank now and just buy something.
Put my money in there and I'm going to get more money out of it.
No. Or I can buy a new one of these bonds and it gives me 4.5%. So why would I hold that one that gives 2%? You have to take a haircut. If you were a bank that actually bought a lot of these bonds last decade, you are sitting on a lot of losses right now. And it's not a problem if you are willing to hold those bonds until the end of their maturity. You are going to get your money back. But if you need cash during that time and
you're a bank, so you're liable to bank runs at any point.
Precisely. And you have to sell those bonds because you need cash. You're gonna sell them for a loss. So that's exactly what happened here. And basically the bank was going to go under until we got news late Sunday, early Monday, that the Fed was stepping in, that they were going to guarantee the depositors, the people that had the people, when I say people, by the way, I mean very few actual people had their money there, venture capital firms, mostly. So the riskiest of Silicon Valley startups. Those money is going to be guaranteed, but they will let the bank fail, essentially. So the shareholders and the bondholders, those people are going to get fucked. But the people that had their money there, those people will be made whole, completely whole. What they're going to do is they're going to let this bank fail. And they also establish a new facility that basically says, are you a bank in a similar situation? Don't worry. You have access to loans from the Fed just to ensure that we'll avoid a bank run or something similar, right? So they're trying to calm the nerves in the financial system, you could say. Now, it hasn't been working out, George, though. The funniest part about all of this is the regulators came out with such a strong announcement, we're going to guarantee the depositors, they saved. No, the market is actually, the Fed has a meeting next week, and the market, the chairman last week told us that they might have to keep raising rates even higher than what they previously thought. And suddenly after this bank collapse,
they might not, yeah.
They might not only might they not raise, so the market is saying they might not raise interest rates at all, and they might be cutting interest rates by July.
It's going to be very interesting. How did we get here? I've got an article on how we got here. 8 years before the second largest bank failure in American history occurred this week, the bank's president personally pressed Congress to reduce scrutiny of his financial institution, citing the low-risk profile of our activities and business model, according to federal records reviewed by the Lever. This was published in the Lever. 3 years later, after the bank spent more than $500,000 on federal lobbying, the lawmakers obliged. Who signed that bill into law? It was Donny Boy, Luigi. Donny Boy himself. He's the one who signed the bill. The Congress passed it.
What George is saying is the bank that actually blew up right now lobbied for its regulators.
About 8 years ago.
For its regulators to relax it from, so it was managing something like 210 billion, right?
It was close to the actual threshold that they had managed to lobby to. Yeah.
If the cap, for extreme stress tests was still at 50 billion, well, they probably wouldn't be passing it. And by the way, George, I follow this stuff pretty closely, a lot of the major banks don't pass their stress tests.
Yeah, we know.
And
we know.
nothing happens.
Nothing happens. But it's more than stress tests, though. I imagine it's holding requirements as well.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, you're right. They don't pass them. I don't pass them, and
nothing happens.
What's her
they
name?
Get an
What's
extension.
her name, Luigi? The one who backstabbed Bernie.
Elizabeth Warren.
And Warren shouts at them every year, right?
Crusader.
Yeah. 2 months later, as we added, the former official, around that time, the bank was lobbying lawmakers and the systemic risk. A bill that was the precursor to legislation ultimately signed by Donald Trump that increased the regulatory threshold for stronger stress tests to $250 billion.
From $50 billion, under which new boundary Silicon Valley Bank was exempted from extreme stress tests. It's been working out.
It's amazing. Sorry, let's go.
I was going to say it's a cycle. Like if you go back the last century, like what happens is you have a major banking crisis.
Yeah.
The banks get regulated and get put in a well-defined box.
Luigi talks about Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall was the last time with Roosevelt.
For a decade or two, and then things start going better because the banks haven't blown up in a long time, and the banks start lobbying for the regulators to relax regulations, and then the banks blow up, and we go into this never-ending cycle. It's bizarre, honestly.
It's money in politics, and finding the way to wiggle its way around until it collapses everything again. We have to do it all over again.
Precisely.
And Glass-Steagall, just to elaborate, basically separated commercial from investment banking. Was a wall. You couldn't use your depositors' money to invest in whatever bullshit
to gamble
with it on whatever the trendy bullshit is on investing. Of course, that's been gone. When did that go off? That was with Clinton, yeah? Clinton
the
last
repealed
bits of it, yeah.
Clinton repealed it, and like clockwork,
how long did
15
it take?
years
15
later.
years. 15 years, we collapsed completely. Biggest financial crisis since the 1930s, depression. And then we had the Dodd-Frank.
And then we had Dodd-Frank, and then the banks were put in a well-defined box, for a decade. Then they lobbied their way out of it again.
And I've got some interesting stats. I've got some interesting stats, Luigi, about back then what was happening and how much of a share that the banking industry had of the whole economy. And it was much less. I mean, in the 1950s and 60s, commonly known as the golden age of capitalist people, when banking was boring, the financial sector accounted for just 10 to 15% of US corporate profits. But the regulation made finance exciting and exceedingly profitable. So
we have to make money. We have to make allegedly.
By the mid-1980s, the financial sector claimed 30% of corporate profits. And by 2001, by which time Wall Street had become a gigantic betting parlor in which the house took a big share of the bets, it claimed a whopping 40%. That was more than 4 times the profits made in all US manufacturing.
Yeah, because the finance sector exported the manufacturing sector. They offshored it.
They call it the Rust Belt states now.
Yeah.
And what has happened? We've got nationalism. It's rusted, folks. It's rusted. And I mean, what has happened since then? We've got nationalism and fascism on the rise, because that's what happens. That's what happens every time. That's the funny thing about it.
Another cycle, but a political one.
Yeah.
Have a big fascist uprising, lots of people die, we realize the mistake and stop doing fascist things.
But this time, Luigi, we've got Titan level weapons, so who knows what's going to happen. It's true.
The funniest part about this whole saga is like the moment that shit starts to hit the fan, that's when all of the finance bros are like, maybe the government does have a role.
Yeah, maybe they can bail me out.
We are all socialists in the trenches.
Exactly. Privatize the profits, socialize the losses. Their motto, isn't it? The oligarchs are
capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich.
That was Martin Luther, Ragged individualism for the poor, and socialism for the rich.
Capital is for the poor, bailouts for the rich.
Yeah. That's the world affairs, people. That's what's happening. Should we finish up with the last bit of news about the UK?
Oh, yes.
The beautiful United Kingdom.
Where the sun doth shine.
Doth shine, but intermittently.
And the tree doth grow.
And the tree doth grow, and maybe not so united these days, but whatever. It's still a kingdom. Still a kingdom. We've got a king. Still a kingdom.
True. Long live.
And then we were going to go about the Northern Ireland protocol, but fuck that. That's out of the
boring.
news now. That's
Cancelled.
out of the news now. So we've got a new piece of news from the UK. Rishi Sunak and the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, came out with their new bill. They've had about 4 of them in the last 4 years. None of them worked. They've got a new bill. Basically, they're going to ban everybody from claiming asylum in the UK if they came illegally, irregularly. If they came by boats, whatever, you're not going to be able to claim asylum. The problem is, as has been showcased extensively to these people, that the UK doesn't provide enough legal ways to claim asylum. For instance, Luigi, how many people do you think claimed asylum last year in the UK, the year 2022?
8 people.
17,000, which is pathetic.
It's more than 8.
It's more than 8. It's definitely more than 8, but it's so much lower than equivalent or similar sized countries like France.
Of course, it's a country of 60 million people, for God's sake.
69, how many are there? But and then because of that, because of this deeply shameful action by the current Tory government, Gary Lineker, which is the presenter he was a footballer. It's the footy Americans. You kick a ball around until you score it in the net.
Soccer. You're going to call it soccer.
Gary's done his fair share of it. And now he's a big-time presenter on the BBC. He does the football stuff. I think the most popular football show on the BBC, whatever. And he came out and had a tweet. And he tweeted, just a second, and the saga began when Lineker described the government's Stop the Boats bill, unveiled last week, as an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s. Didn't even call them Nazis, just alluded to it. and what happened was, he refused to apologize. The BBC announced that he stepped back. They pulled him out of the airwaves. This triggered a shitstorm, Luigi. And
it's a technical term.
I mean, if there's one thing you don't fuck with in the UK, it's people's football. Nobody fucks with the football. It triggered an unprecedented revolt among many of the BBC's best-known pundits and commentators, started by the ex-England forwards Ian Wright and Alan Shearer, and including presenters, etc. The walkout forced the BBC to axe most of its primetime football programming, and they reduced the show to a 20-minute highlight package with no commentary or analysis.
And thus, the peasants revolted.
And thus, anarchy in the UK began. Eventually, they gave in, and he's back to presenting it next Sunday, Saturday. I don't watch this, people. I don't watch this, but he's going to be back to presenting it. But all this showcase is, I mean, and of course, the right with shit rags when this happened, when Gary Lineker sent a tweet before he was actually forced to step down for, 3 days before they had to reverse ferret and reinstate him because the backlash was too much. But the right-wing papers were all in favor of banning, cancelling, etc. I don't know what these free speech warriors want. They wanted to ban him because of his words. And the BBC obliged them, basically. And the whole thing, I mean, in my mind, has showcased this pathetic idea that the BBC is trying to be impartial about things. And it's ridiculous, because right now, I mean, it showcases the dissonance in this country that people can't believe that the chairman of the BBC, which a few years back, the Tories changed the law so that they could directly appoint, the government appoints the chairman of the BBC. So the chairman of the BBC right now is being investigated by a select committee because of his links to the Tory party. The guy is a Tory donor. He's given 400k to the Tories. The guy was, I mean, curiously, he was Rishi Sunak's ex-boss at Goldman Sachs. He also arranged an 800. Fancy that, right?
Coincidence.
Yeah.
Man,
he
69 million people. Oh, wow.
Wow, right?
Yeah.
They all hang out together. It's basically, I don't know, 1,000 people. They all hang out together. They rule this country. That guy, I mean, he also arranged a loan. He's a good friend to GueJoe, and he arranged an 800k loan to him through a friend of his. That's the chairman of the BBC. And I mean,
I
okay,
don't see any conflict. No conflicts.
That guy hasn't stepped back because of impartiality issues. But Gary Lineker, a guy who commentates on fucking Man United and football and whatever the fuck, that guy is not allowed to post on his tweet that, you know, the language is fucking disgusting and revolting that they're using against migrants simply to deflect from their own endless, innumerable failings as a government and as competent professionals. These people are purely competent at this point. And I'm gonna give, I mean, whatever, Sunak, whatever. I mean,
and thus George's brain malfunctioned.
I mean, do you know what? I was trying to say that he's slightly more confident, but fuck that, same shit, different
He's
day.
Slightly more confident than GueJoe, but at
if
least
this
with
didn't
GueJoe,
happen today, and by the way,
with GueJoe, we had the comic relief. We had a lot of comic relief.
We had the comic relief, but he was beyond a buffoon. I mean, first prime minister to be taken down because of parties. Dude.
I mean, the guy knew how to party.
There is no doubt about that. But I mean, the whole impartiality of the BBC, this is ridiculous. I mean, how do you account for Andrew Neil? The guy is the number one, has been the number one for decades interviewer at the BBC. He's the editor of The Spectator, a far-right magazine. Far-right. It's far-right. That magazine, dude, that magazine has defended the far-right dudes in Greece. What was the name? Golden Dawn. The Dawn has set now, thankfully. But I mean, we're talking about Far Right magazine. He was the editor of it, and he was allowed to spew whatever bullshit he wanted on Twitter about it because he was its editor, and he also was the interviewer at the BBC. And to be fair with him, I have no problems with Andrew Neil. He did his job as an interviewer very well. Yeah. But if he's allowed to tweet about his extracurricular activities, then why the fuck isn't Gary allowed? Is that because at this point, by the way, it's so funny because for the past decade, the right-wing degenerates have been screaming that the BBC has been captured by the woke leftists. And it comes out.
Regulatory capture.
It dawns on us once again that they've just been projecting because it just came out that it's genuinely, it's completely captured. It's been them all along, completely captured by the Tories. And then it's come out.
Calm yourself, George.
I will
calm. Woosah.
But yeah, the whole thing has come out, and the BBC will never be considered impartial until you get the appointment of the BBC to be done by an independent board, whatever, something that is not...
Cancel the BBC! Am I doing it right?
Yeah, but I mean, genuinely, this will never happen until it is independently appointed and until the funding is secured and cannot be used every year against them to get them to stay in line. Why do the Tories keep calling the BBC leftist? Because the best defense is a good offense. You keep calling them leftists and they keep pulling to the right.
Is this another football analogy?
Nah, this is the art of war, Luigi. Sun Tzu, master son. But yeah, that's my point. It's a shit show. It's a shit show. And Gary is back
in town.
It's back on our tellies.
And with that, we are out of your tellies.
we are out of your broadcasting apparatus.
We will exit the airwaves.
We'll exit the airwaves gracefully, not like the Silicon Valley Bank. We'll need no bailouts.
It's a bailout. Yeah, thank you to everybody for sticking with us until the end. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
See you guys. Bye-bye.